Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Backyard Cigars. On April 7th of this year, I had the distinct privilege of attending, as a fill-in nonetheless, an event held at the Metropolitan Cigar Club in Fairfield, New Jersey. And this cigar club happens to be the oldest cigar club in the United States of America, founded back in 1994. Now, the members and the guests that were in attendance were all very welcoming. It was a very good environment to be in to smoke a cigar. But the main attraction, the star of the night, was none other than Cuba's top roller, reportedly. And not only just Cuba's top roller, but the world's top roller. A young man, relatively young at the age of 37, by the name of Alejandro Gonzalez Arias, otherwise known as Alex. And he came into Cuba basically to do a tour of the United States. He's got a new cigar line, and he's also got some other things going on business-wise that he wanted to tend to. And doing these shows or these events where he gets to interact with fellow cigar smokers, consumers, and get their opinions as well as educate them about many things, as well as his own lines and the work that he's doing currently in Cuba and in Nicaragua. And he was a very, very gracious young man. He opened up speaking in English because he does speak English. And he started to talk about the different things that he has noticed in differences between the Cuban and the New World cigars, as he calls them, anything from Nicaragua, Dominican Republic. And what I'm holding here is a Lancero. And before you go changing the channel and shaking your head in disgust, because I know there are some channels out there that talk about the Lancero with a lack of reverence and even can be insulting towards what the Lancero brings to the table. You guys know who you are. But I'm not going to talk about you right now and bring you up and name names. But I am holding a custom Cuban Lancero rolled by Alex Arias, something that's available at his shop. And this 7-inch by 38 Lancero is his favorite vitola to roll. This is his favorite size to work with. This, and he told me, the Corona size. Sounds familiar, right? Because a lot of rollers and blenders will say that these are their favorite sizes. Arturo Fuente has said that the Lancero is his favorite size. Tatuajes Pete Johnson loves Lanceros, and even if we're talking about people like Ernesto Perez Carillo, they all love Lanceros. And while we've never seen a Lancero from Padron, who's to say, right? I mean, I don't know his opinions on Lanceros, but being an old traditional vitola size, but not that old. So we're going to touch base on that a little bit. I'm going to cut and light this cigar. I'll come back. As you can see, it has a little pigtail on it. Very smooth, very nice looking cigar. Come right back. Welcome back. Let's talk a little bit about, not so much the Lancero, but let's talk about Alex first. Now, Alex Arias grew up in Cuba, and he didn't have anyone in his family that really played a role in the industry. He was an outsider, so to speak. But he was looking in, and he would actually go to a market near his home, I believe, or in a certain part of the city, where he would talk with a lady who was rolling cigars. And she taught him the basics. And he would watch her every day. He'd go, he'd try to learn something new. Eventually, he went and he took a course. So he takes this course, not just any course. He goes to El Laguito factory, the famous El Laguito factory, and he trains there. So he's certified. Then he begins working, rolling, and waiting for that opportunity. Little did he know how much he was going to have to really push himself, because where he works at now, in in the Hotel Comodoro, there was a legendary roller by the name of Crisantos Miranda. Crisantos Miranda was considered one of the best, if not the best. He was a legend, and he decided to retire in 2013 or 2014. And at that point, that's where this gentleman, Alex Arias, stepped in, assumed the position, took over the role, and a lot of people said they were noticing a buzz that wasn't there when Crisantos was there. It was what new blood will sometimes do, right? It will reinvigorate the masses, and it will attract a certain kind of clientele. And it certainly did in his case, because they came a calling. They wanted to know about this kid, who at the time was, of course, much younger than 37, and they wanted to know what he was about and what his skills were about. And in 2015, a lot of people were saying he might be the best, but he's not the best yet. But he's definitely a future prospect. Now, that was 2015. Fast forward to 2022, he's considered by many to be the best. And he won't say it, because like I said before, he likes to let this do the talking for him. Although he will tell you, like he told me, look, if someone asks me if I'm the best and they press me on it, I'm going to say I'm the best, because you're supposed to say you're the best. You're supposed to believe in yourself. But I'm not going to go around disrespecting anybody and saying that I'm the best, because in reality, there are many great rollers in Cuba. I just happen to be one of them. And so he keeps it humble. He's very straight up with you about how he feels about just about any topic. So we're going to talk about some of the things that I talked with him about. And we're going to see a couple of clips that I recorded while I was there. Now, remember, he's filling the big shoes of Crisantos Miranda. He's come up with a lot of people, interacted with a Yolanda Medina, who's probably considered the greatest female roller ever, and he learned a little bit from everyone that he could. Back to the Lancero. This Lancero is a custom Cuban roll. So I had heard of custom Cuban rolls, but I figured this was something that you would partake in if you went to Cuba and you got the opportunity to go to one of these little hotels, or maybe the hotel that you're staying in while you're there. So custom Cuban smokes are basically Cuban cigars that are being rolled in a tiny shop, in a tiny cigar shop at your local hotel. Some of the Habanos stores will have these little shops as well. So it's Cuban tobacco basically, but none of the bans and none of the affiliation with Habanos S.A, the Cuban government. It's a private company, private entity, so to speak. And these hotels hire rollers. They have the ability to purchase tobacco from the Cuban government, from the many farms that are making your favorite Monte Cristo and so forth. And in Alex's case, he actually has the ability to inspect the tobacco before he purchases it. And if he doesn't like it, he can send it back and ask for something else. So he gets that added advantage. So that's one of the things we went over when we were there. His business partner, Ramze, was pretty much talking about the difference between a famous Cuban cigar that you would buy and a custom Cuban roll. And the main difference is basically that, and Alex corroborated the story as well, that, look, in these factories, these Cuban factories, you have guys that are rolling as many cigars as they can. They're trying to roll as many cigars as they can because they're under the pressure to put out as many cigars as they can, because the demand is through the roof for Cuban cigars. There are mistakes. The draw machines, if we want to talk about draw machines, in the early 2000s, the Dominican Republic all of their factories had the suction draw machines to test their cigar for a cigar being plugged. The Cuban government was just starting to get into this technology, and to date, I don't know if every single factory has these suction machines which check the draw. And even if they do have them, I don't know if they are maintaining them and really going through the whole process, like, a la Perdomo or somebody like that, or Padron, that's really testing every single cigar to make sure that the draw is good. So Alex says, look, I don't begrudge them for doing what they do, but they don't necessarily always put out the best product. Certain lines get a little bit more attention than other lines. And the difference with a custom Cuban roll is that, like most things, their reputation hangs in the balance. So if you don't like the blend, if you don't like the way it was rolled, if your cigar was plugged, there's only one man to blame, and that's that particular roller. He is choosing the tobacco, he is blending it, he's rolling it, and his reputation is at stake. So he takes more care and more pride. He's also better paid. He's also in a better working environment. And we all know that when you're in a better working environment, that can make you more productive. The rollers in the regular Cuban factories, they're getting paid chump change. And yet they're being asked to work harder than what we would imagine. So Alex, on a typical day, rolls between 10 and 20 cigars. If there's a special event or a festival of some kind, he may need to roll 50, and that's about it. So it's a big difference in how his work environment is compared to the other Cuban rollers on the island. He's blessed in many ways, and a lot of the gentlemen or the women, ladies that obtain these positions hold on to them. And in order to hold on to them, you've got to bring it. You've got to be the best or one of the best, because that's what they want. These hotels want a following. They want people to leave Cuba and say, hey, I went to this shop and I spoke to this roller and he had a wealth of knowledge and he just rolled this incredible cigar and it tasted great. So on top of the pressure of rolling the cigar perfectly, they've also got to blend. And they work with some people on that, of course. They don't do everything all by themselves. They have some help. But it's only their reputation at stake, and that makes a very big difference. If you get a plugged cigar from Partagas, who do you blame? You blame Partagas, right? You might even blame the production manager if you happen to know who he is. But you're not going to think, you're going to know that the roller was, played a role in the plugged cigar, but you're not, I don't know about you, but I'm not necessarily going to hold him fully accountable for it, because he's rolling the cigar, but someone should check it. Someone above his pay grade, much above his pay grade, should be ensuring that when that cigar reaches, whether it's England or the United States, that cigar can be smoked. Alex said it himself. He's like, you can have the best tobacco on earth, but if it isn't, and I've said this too, not because I am anywhere near to what Alex knows, but it's just common sense sometimes. If you can't smoke it, then what's the point? If it's rolled in a way where it's plugged, you're not going to enjoy it and you're not going to taste all that great tobacco. And that plays a major role in the differences between the Cuban cigars that you're going to buy, whether you're buying them on the island at the factories or at a authorized Habanos S.A. shop, as opposed to a custom Cuban roll. And this is not to say that they're necessarily better. They're much cheaper, for one. A cigar like this will be about $4 or $5 in Cuba. If you bring it over here to the United States, it's about 18. Reasonably priced, I think, for a Cuban. And so with those differences in mind, then you obviously realize that, look, there are no bands on this. There's no flashiness to it. There's no hologram on this. It's authentic Cuban. At least I can say that because, I got it from the man himself. And just gotten in from Cuba earlier in the day, and there was a storm approaching. So I was concerned that the event was going to be canceled. I made it. And I want to just say thank you to Leo and Jonathan, who extended this invite to me and allowed me comp my ticket and allowed me to be there for free and enjoy the festivities, because a lot happened that night and it was all good. All of it was good. Now I will tell you this: while I cannot say that I have smoked a ton of Cubans, I've smoked enough to know what it's like, what they're like. I've had many that I've enjoyed, some not so much, but very good experiences with the majority of Cubans that I've had. And on that given night, they give you 2 free cigars, and you get two. You get this bad baby right here, bad boy, bad baby, whatever you want to call him. And this is a Behike 56, I believe it is, or 54 or 56. Now, I know what you're thinking. Behike? That Behike? No, not that Behike. In Cuba, to a lot of the rollers, Behike doesn't translate to the Habanos S.A. Behike from Cohiba. It's more the vitola size, where it's nicknamed Behike. So you'll have the Behike 52, 54, 56, 58, and they're talking more about the vitola size. So then the second cigar that was offered to us was Robusto from Alex's new line. And the new line that he has out is called Un Nuevo Reino, a new reign, translated to English. And it's a Nicaraguan puro. And he's actually very interested in knowing what I think of this, because this is his venture into the Nicaraguan market. And you know what? I did tell you guys that this would start to happen when Hirochi Robaina started to make moves in Nicaragua, and everybody knows what Hiroshi was doing. You have to excuse my guest star, Robbie. Robbie comes here every year and he looks for a mate in this very same tree, and he aggressively chirps for the larger part of the day. And he's been at it for a week now and still no sign of a mate. But Robbie is, if you don't know, he's been a guest star on my videos, chirping away in the background. You have to excuse him. He is a robin looking for love. Back to what I was saying, the Behike being a vitola size and not so much the Behike that we know and is so rare and expensive. These Behikes are like $10, $8, $10, and they're full of Cuban tobacco. I can tell you, I smoked that Behike 54, and it was unbelievable. I mean, it was a really great Cuban cigar, really high quality stuff. I was blown away. Now, the Lancero that I'm having today has a good draw, has good flavor. It's a mild to medium bodied. It's got good flavor. It's got those classic Cuban flavors, of course, and it's really good. It's a really good. It opens up as you go along, and it provides just a lot of nice saltiness, some cedar, some earthiness. It's got that range of your typical Cuban flavors, but we'll talk more about that later. Let's talk about some of the things that were discussed on that particular day. Now, Alex opened up talking about his thoughts on New World cigars. New World cigars, also known as anything other than a Cuban. And he said, look, he sang the praises of Cuba, as I expected him to, and he basically said, look, I in Cuba, people say there's a shortage, there's this, it's hard to find good tobacco. He said, no, it's not. He's like, we're growing a good amount of tobacco. I mean, look, the Cuban government is putting out nearly close to 300 million cigars a year. And they've got over 1,000 factories and growing. And they're expanding. And yes, they still need more to keep up with the Cuban appetite of not just the United States, but of the world, right? I mean, that just comes with the territory when you're the motherland. and regardless of plug cigars or anything else that's going on, politics aside, uh, there is still good tobacco there. And Alex said, look, there's still great tobacco there, still great cigars to be had, and they don't all need to be had at Paltagas, at H Up Meno Monte Cristo. They can be had at these little hotels that are doing the custom rolls. Because if you have someone like Alex that knows what he's doing, selecting the right tobaccos, you're okay. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna get a good smoke, and you're gonna get a high quality roll at that. And Alex said, look, what I find with the Cuban tobacco is, look, when we're rolling and we're creating the blend for a Cuban cigar, it's like we're looking for our leaf selection, our binder, our filler, our ligero. And, he says typically, and his business partner also proclaimed, maybe 30% of the flavor on a Cuban cigar comes from the wrapper. Maybe 30%. Unless you get to a smaller ring gauge, a smaller vitola size, then you'll get more. Like how we talked about what Noel Rojas taught me, and I explained to you that in those shorter Coronas in Cuba, that allowed them to capture more of that wrapper flavor. But Cuba, like everybody else, has to give the customer what they want. And if they want a bigger ring gauge, or they want a Robusto, or they want something larger, you're going to get it. You're going to get it. And maybe not officially, Habanos S.A is not putting out a 60 ring gauge, but you can get a Cuban custom roll 6x60 easily. And it won't cost you more than $12. There are even ways to get it if you're in the United States or not in Cuba. So, what he said was, discovering Nicaragua, he said, and New World cigars, there's so much at play with the different wrappers that you can use, binder, and there's so many different things that you can do to enhance flavor. He says, I think, he said, and I quote him, he said, I personally think that Nicaragua is the closest soil to Cuba in terms of what it offers and the flavor that it can bring to a cigar. He said, I think Nicaragua for me is it. And he was very impressed because he said, look, you go to Cuba, you've got your main regions, Puerto Bajo, you know, you've got these main regions, right, that we all know, Pinal del Rio, but he goes, you go to Nicaragua, and you've got Esteli, Jalapa, Somoto, Condega, you've got Ometepe. He's like, you got these slight variations that give you so much to work with. And he was very impressed by that, and rightfully so, because he began to work on his own line of cigars. Un nuevo reino, a new reign, which is, like I said, a Nicaraguan puro. And he fell in love with Nicaraguan tobaccos. And he told me, he said, look, the strength is different. The strength is different. The ligero is different. Obviously, it's all different. But, he just came away from it thinking to himself that his goal would be in Nicaragua, which is a lot of, old timers think like this. Padron thought the same way, to craft a Nicaraguan cigar that could meet and match the quality of a Cuban cigar. That was the goal, to find that blend, that profile that could really measure up. And so that's why you have so many cigars, whether they're being done in Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, that are looking for that perfect blend, that perfect balance to match it up against the magical soil of Cuba. There's no other way to put it, right? I mean, this is, we talked about, homage cigars, and how a lot of cigar makers will make a homage cigar to Cuba, and they will try to incorporate these Nicaraguan tobaccos to give it a Cuban feel. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But that's how it is. Now, I asked Alex, why do people hate on Lanceros so much? Why is that? He said because the majority of Lanceros are not being rolled properly. They're being rolled in a way that creates plugs, difficult draws, and it's giving them a bad name. And the Lancero is not an old vitola size, not really. I mentioned that it's a little old, but it's really early 60s, right? Mid 60s. It was created for Fidel Castro. And I'll share with you this little interesting fact that the reason the Lancero is 7.5 by 38 ring gauge has to do with when you take 7.5 inches to millimeter, you get 190.5 millimeters, which in centimeters, 190.5 centimeters will equal 6 feet 3 inches, which was Fidel Castro's height. The 38 ring gauge being his age at the time that the cigar was created for him. So that's the reason why a Lancero is 7.5 by 38. And that was a little tidbit that Alex shared with us on that night. And Alex said, look, Lanceros, they're just not being, rolled correctly. But people who love Lanceros, they have good taste in cigars. And he told me straight out, you tell your friends that love Lanceros that they have good taste. Now, let me show you what Alex did while he was doing this. Let's take a look. One more thing, Alex. The Corona Vitola. Noel Rojas says that that's where you get the most flavor from the wrapper, where the true expression of what you're rolling is at. ¿Qué piensas?
Well, I respect his point of view. For that, normally I prefer always the smaller ring gauge, like 38, like we talked before, 40,
or a Lancero.
42. All those thinner cigars, for me, is more flavor.
And now I know that you love the Lancero, and a lot of people hate it. Do you think marketing is the reason why people are gravitating towards the larger ring gauges and ignoring the Lonsdales, the classic sizes like the Corona, Petit Corona, and the Lancero?
No, I don't think so. It's marketing. I think so. It's like a fashion. Because normally, who used to smoke a lot of big cigar is American market. It's who bring popular the big ring gauge.
Big dark cigars.
Jimmy Fonda's warehouse area, like just come in this spot right here.
Este es estilo entubado.
Ahora voy a hacerlo entubado.
Okay, so we're gonna see the master,
I was looking at my phone.
Alex Arias, roll entubado style in a few moments.
So it's not a huge.
I will show you the difference. For example,
I like to see people smoke, man.
And this is a Cuban master at work, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a Cuban master at work.
Great guys. Great.
normally the people don't like entubado because many of them, they believe when it's entubado, it's more difficult for the draw. But I learned like old school. All my life I make entubado.
That's an old school. That's what our people are taught. Yeah.
For example, I will show you.
Entubado
Is when the people make like this. For example,
Were you from Panama?
take the cigar, the leaf, and start to make like the entubado.
Okay.
What part of Queens?
Bayside?
This is entubado. But in the factory now, for example, in Cuba, they make
I live right behind Blue Jack.
do different.
Yeah, now they have Havana Claves.
They call him plisado.
Is Sullivan's still there?
It's different. It's made like
They
this.
change the name every now and then.
It's two different ways. Entubado or plisado. This is plisado.
Change. Every time there's a
It's different.
or whatever.
Or,
Entopado is rolling.
or entubado. It's how you can see. It's like a tube.
Yeah. Like,
Does that improve the draw?
Yeah.
Some, yeah.
If you don't do it properly,
If you do it right.
the entubado can affect you the draw, and the cigar can be plugged. I will make you a lancero now.
Oh, a Lancero. I'm a Lancero lover here, so for all you non-Lancero lovers, eat it. This is for my YouTube channel, Backyard Cigars, and all of the followers that follow. This is how it's done.
you're on Cash App, yeah.
Normally, when you make the lancero, you have to take care, don't twist.
Or it gets a little too tight.
Yeah.
Lancero entubado.
Alex, why do you do that? For a cleaner cut?
Pardon?
Do you do that for a cleaner cut? When you're putting up those little small
To make the head more. I don't know.
round. Okay, got it.
You know, I ordered 4 or 5 weeks ago. I got it.
There you go, Amazon.
That's the name until the cease and desist. Fucking basil cake coming after you. I said, you know what, when I get big enough, he wasn't my name,
I can buy it.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck yeah.
How much is the box thing that we walked?
You have to wait the 2 days for
Okay.
He's don't mess with the guy's masterpiece.
Oh, he's got one.
I do.
How much is it? Where the fuck are
You'll see, I got all kinds of acetaminophen, cream. So I'm gonna put whatever stuff is lighter and whatever gets left over.
Normally, this cigar need to put in the press, but what?
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah.
Daniel, gracias. Muchas gracias, de verdad. Esto sí que va. Oh, man. Daniel, 505 Cigar, eat your heart out. I got a Lancero rolled by a Cuban master. Oh, my God. Muchas gracias, de verdad. Now, I also asked Alex, what is the most difficult vitola size to roll? I've heard it's the Salamon. I've heard that, the Salamon, he said, look, respectfully, the Salamon size is very difficult to roll. You need to have a lot of experience. There are not that many people who roll the Salamon size. But in terms of overall difficulty, it is the Lancero. Because you have to be so careful with the way that you roll it in order to make it an enjoyable smoke. And that's what he had to say about that. Now, we talked about Medio Tiempo. And I said, Alex, what is this marketing of the Medio Tiempo leaf? And is it that much of an important part of a blend? And he said, he chuckled a little. He said, no. He goes, Medio Tiempo leaf, yes, it's flavorful. Yes, we use it in Cuba. We've used it forever in Cuba. And we've never talked about it. At one point, we thought of it as the leaves that we would use that were sold to the cigarette makers because some of the strength that you get from it. And it adds a little sweetness to it as well. He said, but it's marketing. It's all marketing. Medio Tiempo, he's like, yeah, it can enhance a blend, but it isn't to make it or break it. And he didn't say it exactly like that, but he said it's mainly marketing. We talked a lot about marketing in cigars. We talked about ring gauges and how they keep going up, up, and up, and up. And he said, look, I'm not a fan of the big ring gauges, he said. He says, I just don't see as a cigar maker how I can really make the best at that size. But we still offer it because the customer has to get what he wants. He said, it's attached to a lot of machismo. He says, men want to appear to be strong, and that's where you get this emphasis on the darker tobaccos and the big dark cigars. And he said, look, a lot of times they're not getting the strength that they think they're getting. What they're getting is some of the harshness from some of the wrappers that either haven't been fermented adequately or are simply giving off something that they interpret to be strength, and it's not strength. And he said, look, I can make you a cigar, natural, and a lot of you guys know this. If you know the cigars, you know this. A natural wrapper, and the cigar will be so strong that you'll feel it almost automatically because of the way the blend was created, the ligero. You guys that are rolling out there know a little something about this. Now, he said, yeah, there might be some people that actually like a larger cigar for one reason or another. Maybe it's economical, maybe it's just because of the burn time, so forth. He's like, I'm not going to criticize them. That's what they like, that's what we give them. But he doesn't feel as a blender, as a roller, that's where it's at. Now, he mentioned tricks that cigar companies play on consumers, us cigar smokers. Tricks. And he said, look, even we, the Cuban government, we do it too. And a lot of other folks do it as well. He singled one particular cigar maker out, and that was Rocky Patel. And he said straight out, he's like, look, I was smoking a Gurkha. And they call this Gurkha the ghost because of the smoke and the way the smoke rises. And I was smoking it, and I realized why that smoke was pouring out. It's the oil on the cigar. He says, they put that oil on the cigar. He goes, there's a lot of people that do this, the tricks of the trade. They will darken their cigar wrappers, glisten them with oil. And I've heard these rumors in the past, but I could never get anyone to really tell me yes or no that this was really happening. Well, apparently it's happening. And it's happening a lot more than we might think. So I've never seen this done, but apparently there are methods. Instead of going through the long process of fermentation, the way it should be done, that they apply this natural dye to the cigar and essentially set it up somewhere where it's going to cook in cook in the color. Other ways that they do it is with steam. Other people will just simply try to lather it with something. That's probably the worst way to do it. But people do it because he said, look, wrappers are not this dark. You're not gonna find wrappers this dark. I don't care if you think that this double oscuro fermented this way. That's not the case. He said that's not what happens. There is manipulation going on here, and not everyone does it. Some people go the slow way and actually get some of that color through natural fermentation, but many do not. Many take the shortcut. Is it harmful to us? It's not harmful to us necessarily. A lot of the ingredients used are natural ingredients for the most part and present no real harm other than the embarrassing dye on the lips if it happens to be cheaply done. And then there's just the idea that you're being deceived, right? That you think that for some reason this darker colored cigar is going to offer you something extra, some particular flavor that you're looking for. And it's not. It's just it's a visual thing. It's something that he says the American market has fueled, and in regards to the shiny gloss looking oily cigars is another thing that the American market has kind of looked for, because hey, us Americans, we like big shiny things, right? That's just we like things like that. And I did find some research on back in the day, talking like late 1800s, early 1900s in Cuba, where they had this product called oil of Havana. And it was a natural product, oil that was created with botanicals and so forth. And they would mix it up and they would apply this to cigars. And not so much for the oily look, but to enhance the flavor and just ramp up either certain spices or ramp up strength in some cases. Who used it? I don't know. Are they still using it? I don't know. But Alex said the Cuban government is still employing a lot of these old tricks in their cigars. What lines, what makers? I don't know. I couldn't tell you, and he didn't name any. But he didn't exclude himself, his group, the Cuban government, from the companies that actually do this. And let's talk about something else. And this is going to be a video that it may last a little bit, but I want you to stick with me just a little bit, because I want you to understand that what happened on this particular night was magical. It was magical for me in so many ways. But the wealth of knowledge that this gentleman has on not just Cuban tobacco, but on tobacco in general is incredible, and the way he can articulate it is even more incredible. We talked about how he's looking forward to growing the business in Nicaragua. We talked about cutting the cigar and how he feels, and actually this was more on his business partner that talked about the cutting and the lighting, where he talked about the worst cut for your cigar is the punch hole. He says that is the worst. He recommended to everyone in the room, do not punch hole your cigars. He begged everyone, don't do it, because what you're doing is pushing in the tobacco and allowing, the way he explained it is going to be a lot better than the way I explained it. I should have taken notes on that. But basically, it creates a problem, not only for the draw, creates a draw problem, because he says as the cigar is burning and the tobacco's heating up, it's looking for a wider surface. Again, he explained it better. But basically, he said, look, punch hole in your cigar. For an emergency, fine. But on the regular, avoid it. Don't do it. It's not good for your cigar. It's not good for the flavor of the cigar. And if I can get a quote from him later on, I'll add it in the description of what exactly he meant that was horrible about punch cigar. You know, in terms of strength, we talked a lot about that, and he said, look, a lot of people are looking to make the strongest cigar, but they're not looking to make a balanced cigar, and that's a problem. And that's a problem I've talked about on this channel as well, where you have cigars that can be overwhelming in one way or another, either because they're strong or because you get, you know, a certain flavor note that dominates, and it creates a problem because there's no balance. You need balance, and he emphasized that. We talked about the perfect RH, and Alex said, as well as Ramze, his business associate, he said, look, for Cuban cigars, the best RH is really, you know, 63 to 65. For non-Cubans, like Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, you know, anything from 67 to even as much as 68. But he kind of said, you know, try to stay away from getting close to the 70. You don't want that squishy feel on your cigar. You think you do, but it's not good for your cigar. It's not going to give you the best smoking experience. And that was what they said in regards to the RH levels. Now, I asked Alex, what do you think about what Hirochi Robaina is doing, and how has it, you know, played out amongst his fellow colleagues? Let's see what Alex has. Alex, Hirochi Robaina. Soy gran fanático de Hirochi Robaina. I'm a big fan of Hirochi Robaina. What do you think about the waves that he's making, coming to Nicaragua, going to Nicaragua, trying to become a little independent, right, from the Cuban side? And I know that it has an impact. What are your thoughts on Hirochi and what he's doing?
Normally, for example, I don't try any of his cigars yet. I would really love to have that opportunity. But what the question you made me about what you believe, what I believe about him, I believe he made the right way, like made Hamlet, like me, like maybe Abel Esposito is another guy who was working with the non-Cuban brands. And all the people in the cigarette industry, like all of us, have many dreams.
Yes.
And many dreams in Cuba is not difficult to make it true.
Yes.
And that's one of the way, like Hamlet, Hirochi, me, try to have some dreams and make it possible. For that, we try to make and to bring to the new world cigar what we learned in all these years, and we try to make our best. And from my point of view, and maybe it's the same like all of those guys, I always say everybody give us the opportunity, try one, and let him the cigar talk by himself. It's the only way, you know, if he's making a good job, if I'm making a good job, or any of us is making a good job. But from my point of view, the best they can do it is try to make his own cigars, something different, and for sure the people will love it.
Well, you
only with time.
You give me an address. I'll send you some Hirochi Robaina cigars.
Awesome. Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Alex. So Robusto Joe is a website that I've checked out in the past, and I've found a lot of great, interesting things on this website. And I was looking on, and its title is actually The Magic of Maduros. And in one of them, he writes, ever smoke a Maduro and find the flavors to be herbal in a way that no natural cigar has ever been? If so, chances are the cigar has been treated with Bethune. That's when a solution is applied to the wrapper to add flavor as well as to darken its color. Each cigar maker has its own recipe for Bethune, the ingredients of which are closely guarded secret. Many cigar makers do this but will never admit it. Again, this information was provided by an anonymous source. Cigar making is like magicians. They never reveal their secrets, and neither will the cigar industry. But if a cigar is black and extremely herbal, chances are sleight of hand is at work. I, for one, have no problem with the use of Bethune. It adds additional flavor and character to a cigar. As long as the ingredients are natural, I have no objection. Now, he goes on to say, is this cheating? Lastly, Is this a no-no? Coloring. During the cigar boom of the 1990s, some unscrupulous cigar makers resorted to painting their cigars to simulate a Maduro. Not only did this result in cigars that tasted awful, but left the smoker's lips and fingers discolored. These days, the practice is still in use, but not as a substitute for natural fermentation. Now, this one's from Cigar Advisor. And Cigar Advisor says that, and this was printed back in August 15, 2008, the truth about oily cigars. If you've ever wondered why some cigars look so shiny, the following will enlighten you. In a recent email, the writer noted that while attending a herf at a local cigar store, one of the store's employees told him that many cigar makers use mineral oil to make the Maduro wrapper dark and black, and whenever you see a really dark Maduro wrapper, it's because they rub it in with mineral oil. Claiming he had never heard of this, he asked if it was true. Oh, well. They went to Jorge Padron of Padron Cigars, and this is what Jorge had to say. There are some manufacturers that use some sort of oil to give their cigars the oily sheen on the wrapper, said Jorge. I'm not sure what type of oil it is or how it is applied. Needless to say that Padron Cigars would never even consider doing something like this. Much has been talked about oily wrappers and how consumers should look upon this as a positive attribute of a cigar. At Padron, we look at oily wrappers as wrappers that have not been fermented completely. Enough said. I mean, I think that, when you have a master like Jorge Padron telling you what's what, you have to accept that. So if you like your oily cigars, by all means, they aren't using anything that's going to harm you, but be aware that that's not natural. It's just, that's just the way it is, and a lot of people are doing it. A lot of people are doing it. We just don't know who or why. Well, maybe we know the why, because it looks shiny and people like it. It's attractive, right? So that's where we get with that. There's been some speculation that Alex has defected. I could not confirm this. Can't deny it either. I don't know. Alex is on a tour as far as I know. He's touring the United States for his new line. I don't really think he's defected. There were no... Everything I dug into did not indicate that he is defecting and trying to break away from the Cuban government. I think he likes his job. He likes what he does. He's comfortable at the Hotel Comodoro. In the Hotel Comodoro, which you can find it in la calle 3, 84, 84, Minimal Havana, Playa. And that is, it's an older hotel. I mean, it's not shabby. It's had some renovations done in the early to mid 2000s. The cigar shop was refurbished probably 7-8 years ago, and it's from what I saw, it seems like a nice, decent place. Somewhat rustic to some folks, but I thought it was just a decent place to stay. But hey, if you're going there as a cigar lover and you're staying there, and you've got Alex not that far away from you, then you're okay. You'll be fine. You can deal with the Spartan amenities. And so just going down the checklist, because I did have a little bit of a cheat sheet here, just because there were so many topics that we talked about, that we know that Alex started in 2013, but he was rolling 7 years prior to that, before he took over for Crisanto Miranda. And his favorite roll, that the one that made him famous, is the double Lancero. And he says that is that is even harder to roll than a typical Lancero. And the double Lancero is about 11 inches, and it still has like a 38 ring gauge, but it is his favorite roll and the one that made him famous. The Behike 52 is his signature vitola size that he rolls. That's the one that a lot of people go after and they want. Maybe because they confuse the Behike, or maybe just because it is incredibly delicious. because I had a version of it and I think it's incredible. We know that he trained at El Laguito factory, and we know that he's 37 years old and he's young. He's incredibly young to be considered the world's greatest roller, but that's what he's being called. Now, it has come time for me to just kind of sum up what I thought of this cigar, which is the Alejandro Gonzalez Arias Lancero custom roll. And I just think it's a nice mild to medium Lancero. It has decent spice, decent, very little pepper, more like baking spices and cedar, and a little bit of earthiness to it. A little bit of that Cuban saltiness, right? It isn't mind-blowing, but it's a Lancero that I can smoke and enjoy and not really have to worry about the draw or how it's going to give me issues. The burn line, you don't need to touch this burn line at all. I've smoked at least 4 of them already, and I haven't had to touch them up at all in regards to the burn line. They've never gotten wonky on me. And so yeah, I think that they're definitely great. They're even great for those of us that might want to purchase them and age them for a few years, because ultimately the tobacco that's being used in this cigar, as well as many of his cigars, it's 2-3 year old tobacco, which is typical in Cuba. You're not going to find like in Nicaragua where they're aging the tobacco for 6-7 years. You're generally not going to find that. A Gran Reserva in Cuba is probably 5 years old, and that's just how it is. But it was an incredible experience for me to be at the Metropolitan Cigar Club, the oldest, like I said, in America, and it was a moment where I could sit back and really enjoy myself amongst a group of cigar lovers that, you could just feel the love in the room, and whether the love was just for the cigars, not necessarily for each other, but nonetheless, there was an appreciation of what was going on, and we got to try incredible rums, very vintage rums, some Black Tot, some Panamanian rums that are very rare. So along with the experience of trying these cigars and listening to Alex talk, we also got to try some very good drams. And I just want to thank you all for watching. I'll touch more on the subject of what happened on that night in future reviews, especially on reviews on some of his cigars. But I want to thank you all for watching and sticking with me and giving me the support that you give me. And I really appreciate the time that you've taken to watch this video. If you've watched it in completion, well, then I give you even more credit, because I don't even know if I could. But thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this video. Until next time on Backyard Cigars.